not afraid of you.
What's going on here? We're watching a scene from the opening 10 minutes of Jodorowsky's Santa Sangre. In this scene, we see Concha, a mother and leader of a religious cult, who are making their last stand against the authorities while they try and bulldoze a church at the behest of the landowner. A Roman Catholic Monsignor arrives to resolve the conflict. He learns that Concha and her followers worship a girl whom they claim is a saint, after she was attacked and had her arms cut off by two criminal brothers. Following the attack, the pool of blood remained and lied at the center of the church. Her holy blood is of dubious validity, and after the Monsignor reaches his hand into the pool, he has this to say.
It's paint!
It's holy blood!
You hear me, crazy woman?
It's holy blood! It's holy blood!
And just like that, the demolition is carried out. Jodorowsky's movies are drenched in mysticism and surrealism, often challenging religious conventions. His breakthrough film, El Topo, became a sensation on the midnight movie circuits in the US, earning praise from the likes of John Lennon, who later convinced Beatles manager Alan Klein to fund his next project. The result of that collaboration was 1973's The Holy Mountain, a visually extravagant exploration of Western eroticism. However, a falling out between Jodorowsky and Klein left El Topo and The Holy Mountain buried in obscurity, though still being revered as cult classics in underground cinema. For many of us Gen Zers and online film enthusiasts, Jodorowsky's most famous work might be one that never saw the light of day, his ambitious but doomed attempt to adapt Frank Herbert's Dune. His ambition was so expansive that it quickly spiraled beyond any feasible budget, only becoming legendary as an unrealized dream. Jodorowsky has never been known for his accessibility. His films often overflow with symbolism, blurring the line between the profound and the impenetrable. At times, as an audience member, they can even feel confrontational. Yet, Santa Sangre stands apart. While still steeped in his signature strangeness, it is by far his most approachable film. More emotionally grounded than his previous works, Jodorowsky crafts Santa Sangre as a hallucinatory fable about trauma, religious fanaticism, and the struggle for autonomy. The film explores the cyclical nature of abuse, with Fenix, the main character, trapped within a script of violence and control, concepts planted in his mind during childhood, which now collide in his fractured reality. Concha, his mother, an armless Madonna, represents both the suffocating grip of dogma, as well as the unchecked powers of martyrdom, twisting faith into an instrument of vengeance. And now a quick disclaimer.
This movie includes explicit sexual and violent images and discusses themes related to religion. If any of these topics are uncomfortable for you, this is your warning and your chance to click off of the video, but please do not click off of the video. Also, we will be spoiling Santa Sangre in its entirety. You have been warned.
The film begins with a stark image, a naked figure sitting atop a dead tree in a white room. There's something recognizably messianic about his appearance on the tree. The beard, the shoulder-length hair, his naked flesh exposed like Christ on a cross. Despite the holy imagery, we're still well aware of the grotesque. Whatever's gone wrong in Fenix's life, it has turned him into something of an animal. He's thin and wiry, and moves in feral patterns. Right from the opening scene, this clashing between a holy sense of sacred and of the grotesque are on full display. The camera frames him in a way that evokes a mystical presence. We see a tattooed phoenix on the man's chest, mirroring not only his name, but a figurative journey he will be going through, from ashes to life. Years ago, Fenix spent his childhood as a traveling circus's child magician. The circus was run by his father, Orgo, a knife-throwing hypnotist, and mother, Concha, a trapeze aerialist and leader of the religious cult of Santa Sangre. The circus crew also includes, among others, a tattooed woman who acts as an object of Orgo's knife-throwing feats, her adopted daughter Alma, a deaf-mute mime and tightrope walker whom Fenix is close to, Fenix's dwarf friend Aladdin, a pack of clowns, and, of course, what would a traveling circus be without an elephant? Watching Fenix's childhood memories erupt from the chasm of his stunted mind, we're confronted with scenes of disturbed sexuality and violence. Orgo carries on a public flirtation with the tattooed woman, who fillets the knives he throws at her, twisting and melting the pleasures of violence and sexuality. All while Concha stands guard of her soon-to-be bulldozed church. She returns to find Orgo amidst his seduction, and becomes enraged. But Orgo, the hypnotist, puts Concha in a trance, and in a depraved moment, he brings her around on back and rape her while Fenix watches from afar. Despite them coming from a corrupted mind, these images follow a strange formal logic, one where sex, violence, and control all ooze out of the same hemorrhaged mind. We smash cut to a sick elephant's phallic trunk spurting out blood. As if there hadn't been enough visual trauma for the hour, the elephant dies in front of Fenix. The helpless boy, with nothing else to do, cries out and begs him to live. The dead elephant is paraded through the city, inside a giant casket, ending at the edge of the city dump, near a small canyon. It culminates in a scene of almost comical savagery, as the animal's body is torn limb from limb by scavengers once they've dropped it into the canyon. Fenix watches in tears, and Orgo, in an attempt to make a man out of him, tattoos a spread-eagled phoenix onto his chest, identical to the one on his own. The physical mark left by his father will forever be imprinted onto the body of the boy, a remembrance of the suffering he endured. Later, while Concha performs her trapeze act in front of the crowd, she sees Orgo and the tattooed woman flirting in the corner before sneaking out of the circus tent. She demands to be let down, and she finds the two laying together in bed. Concha sneaks about and finds a conveniently placed bottle of sulfuric acid and ambushes the two. Despite the pain, he can still overpower her. He grabs her by the arms and pins her to his knife-throwing board, and he swiftly slices her arms clean off. Concha is left to the same fate as the idol and martyr whom she worshipped, this time at the hands of her very own lover. Jodorowsky frames her death in such a way that extrapolating meaning from it can be difficult. It is imbued with a sense of divinity. The camera levitates godlike above the scene, Concha's face almost ecstatic as she looks towards the heavens, her earthly fervor fulfilled. But we're still left questioning. Is her mirrored dismemberment meant to symbolize the inevitable violence of worship, a cyclical process that regurgitates its own meaning from disciple to disciple? Is it a commentary on power dynamics between relationships, a philosophical takedown of certain patriarchal figures by exposing their barbaric instincts? Maybe it's all of it. But really, I think it's nothing but a banal truth. After he kills his wife, Orgo stumbles into the street and slits his own throat, unable to bear the humiliation. We see this ejaculation of blood for a brief moment, but the true horror doesn't come until we feel its stillness. The stillness of cold corpse slowly dying in the street. A stillness where no onlookers pay any attention, where the music plays uninterrupted as if nothing of substance has occurred. The only one who seems to care, who seems to apply meaning to this massacre, is Fenix, who's left alone to grapple with the terrible truth that the sun still rises regardless of your pain, that the world keeps moving in one direction, hurtling you forward across time and space without giving you a moment to process what it is that you've lost. In the present day, Fenix is taken out on a trip, out of the asylum and to a movie theater along with some other patients. After being dropped off, a pimp intercepts the group and persuades them to take some cocaine. While under the influence, the crew follows the pimp through the busy streets full of drunks, drugs, and he introduces the boys to a sex worker, leaving them to have their fun. But Fenix stays behind, and his attention is caught when he hears loud music playing behind him. He turns towards the sound and finds none other than the tattooed woman dancing with the pimp. Every fiber in his body fills with rage as images from his past are brought up back to haunt him. The following morning in the asylum, Fenix and the boys are asked by the doctor how their night out went. They all seem to be in better spirits now. But while he's alone, he hears someone calling to him from outside. He sees his mother, Concha, calling out to him from the street. Her return is messianic, guiding Fenix out of the asylum with beams of light, appearing before him radiant, immaculate, practically angelic. Out on the streets, the tattooed woman brings in a group of military men who are looking to pay for some love. She shows the tallest of the bunch to Alma, but in his arms, she wakes and frees herself by smashing a bottle onto the man's head. She successfully flees and hides, but later that night, another unknown guest arrives at the tattooed woman's abode. The unseen assailant, bearing red fingernails, greets her with swift, deep stabs of the knife, leaking her blood everywhere. The moment is bathed in color and pathos. The act itself is portrayed aggressively, sound evoking deep penetrations into the woman's flesh. Thrusts of the knife set to pulsating percussion, but once more, perhaps the most disturbing aspect of the violence is the stillness in the aftermath. A motionless body, or the silent nothing reaction of a disaffected daughter. In a playhouse, we see the very same red fingernails, elegantly displayed in a dance of the hands. Concha, with Fenix behind her serving as her hands, perform an act of blending, where mother takes from son, and son performs in the likeness of mother. The act is praised by the other performers, a young woman stating her interest in joining acts together. Later that day, Fenix shows her to a secluded stage, and invites her to take part in a new act they could perform together. He comes dressed in the same image as his father. Orgo's influence lingers even in death. Like his father, he puts her into a trance, and begins throwing his knives. But before he can hit his final mark, he's interrupted by his mother. She's disgusted in his interest in a woman besides her, for idolizing an aspect of femininity that his mother does not possess. She forces him, using his arms as her own, to throw one last knife at the young woman's belly. Try as Fenix might, he is unable to control himself. His arms are hers, and her wish is his command. This is when the movie is at its most effective, when it's using violence as a grisly tool to carve out a sense of helplessness in the face of life-altering trauma. His brutality is both torment and penance, a self-inflicted purge of desire through violence. It wouldn't be possible without Alex Jodorowsky, whose face is etched with struggle, quivers in futile defiance before surrendering. A hollow, murderous shell of a man. Fenix buries the body in the backyard and covers her in a white paint similar to the white paint worn by Alma in her youth. At home, their abode is bright and full of lightness, but the relationship is nothing to be worshipped. Fenix might possess a more complete body, but Concha is in possession of Fenix's self. He has been hollowed out and merely acts as a vessel for him to carry out her bidding. Fenix possesses no identity of his own, playing the part of a puppet in a shoddy spectacle. Acting as the mutilated Concha's hands, he caresses the piano, he knits her scarves, he butters her toast. But none of his actions are really his own. The only thing he has possession over are his hallucinations, his memories, and his past. While buying some chemicals from an apothecary, Fenix notices a carnival float advertisement for a woman wrestler stronger than any man. His interest is piqued, and he goes to investigate the claim. Alma, still walking the streets, finds a flyer for Concha and Fenix's act, which contains their home address on the backside. At the wrestling ring, Fenix is impressed by the female strongwoman and goes to her backstage. He invites her over to his house to witness an exclusive performance. The two of them in the dark, decrepit lair, Fenix preps himself to wow her. He's attempting to transform a dead mummy into 100 flying doves, but once he opens the sarcophagus, he finds Concha standing in Egyptian garb. She commands him to kill the wrestler. The scene plays out much like the previous death. Fenix's arms don't belong to him, and he's unable to control himself, although this time he kills the wrestler with a katana. Concha has effectively turned herself from worshipper to martyr, wherein Fenix is held prisoner, overcome by a religious fixation, which positions his mother and her suffering as godheads, the center of worship. To disobey her would be to commit sacrilege, and that he is incapable of doing. Despite this, he still falls to his knees in anguish and examines his bloodied hands as if they were not his own. Like his previous victims, he buries her in the backyard and covers her with white paint. He butchers them to purge himself of his spiritual impurities, but also to ferry these women towards holiness, liberating them so that they may resurface, sinless from the grave as purified birds in graceful, dazzling light. But all around the backyard, the victims arise from the ground. Their ghostly figures covered in white, Fenix is haunted to his knees. He begs for their forgiveness. Alma sneaks into their house, but this time it's noticeably more drab and decrepit than before. She finds the white paint and covers herself the same way she did as a child. When Fenix finds her there, he's instantly reminded of one of the few bright spots of his life. They hastily plan to run away together, and we're treated with one of the most beautiful moments of the film. But the young couple in love still have a major problem to overcome. Concha orders her hands to kill Alma, to cut off her arms. She orders him to repeat the troubled past and carry on the legacy. He's nearly compelled to do it, lunging himself at her several times. Faced with no other opportunity, the only way to free himself would require nothing short of an act of heresy. The total deconstruction of his faith in his mother's sanctity, heroic rebellion against the forces of heaven. Santa Sangre concludes not with a showdown, but with sacrilege. Fenix desecrating the temple he's created in worship of his mother, incinerating her effigy, finally emancipating himself from his servitude. It's also an act of philosophical upheaval, disowning the ideology that has defined him, which displaces selfhood and exalts trauma above all else. He drives the blade into Concha's stomach, and she races across the room. Her final words:
You will never be free of me. I'm inside of you.
Alma shows him to his bedroom, where a mannequin doll of his mother rests soundlessly under the covers. None of this. The killing, his mother, in control, it's all been in his head. It's been none other than Fenix with the help of a doll. They cast the mannequin out and he destroys the homemade temple. Alma helps peel off the red nails that laid on Fenix's fingertips, and one by one, his friends vanish. All but Alma. She leads him outside the house, where police are waiting, and order them to put up their hands. As they both comply, Fenix watches for the first time, his own hands lifting up towards the heavens, in awe that he has at last claimed autonomy over not just his arms, but of himself.
My hands. My hands. My hands.
In the end, Santa Sangre is a resurrection story, and not simply in the biblical sense. It could have simply been a film about trauma and desire colliding until they inevitably implode, and it still would have been quite compelling. But tracing homicidal impulses back to parental scars isn't exactly uncharted territory within the world of horror, even in 1989. What sets Santa Sangre apart, what makes it linger in your mind, even days after the credits roll, is its seething religious perversity. It doesn't just explore suffering and trauma. It deconstructs it as a false idol, exposing how pain masquerades as sanctity, how devotion can be a prison. The opening image of Fenix, perched like a mad Christ in his asylum, sears into our minds the idea of trauma as transcendence. But even as the film ventures beyond those walls, it never really leaves the asylum. When Fenix re-enters the world, he isn't free. He's simply trapped in an even wider cage, one built from memories of irrevocable loss. Yet, beneath the grotesque and surreal, there's a distinctly human struggle for self-liberation. His final act isn't just an exorcism of his mother's ghost. It's a rejection of the fate that was written for him. Santa Sangre believes defiantly in the power of sacrilege as salvation. It suggests that true freedom, real, unshackled rebirth, only comes when we tear down the monuments of our past and refuse to be bound by the saints we were told to worship. Really quickly, I just want to apologize for the level of quality in this video. It's the night before upload, and I keep reworking it to try to remove these copyright strikes, but it's not working, so I'm likely going to be taking some more drastic measures in order to get this video shown, because right now it's, if I upload it the way it is, which is, you know, all the footage neatly laid out, it'll be blocked in too many countries. So that's why there are so many weird interruptions between the footage. I apologize for that. Yeah. Anyway, I still hope that you liked the video. That is a wrap on Santa Sangre. Yeah, my friend of mine, my buddy, rented this movie several weeks or months ago, and it was just such an incredible watch that I wanted to make a video about it. So this has been a really fun exercise to watch this movie a couple more times and really try and study it and do a lot of reading about it. Unlike other films like Baxter, there was a lot of writing on this movie, so it made it, you know, easier for me to gather a lot of ideas and kind of put them into conversation with one another. So here are this video sources. Next week, if you're watching this, right now, you're getting a little treat because I'm going to tell you what next week's episode is going to be about. Well, what it's probably going to be about. I'm floating around 2 different ideas. One of them is about Michel Foucault's book on, it's called Discipline and Punish, about like torture and how we went from executing people publicly to now, anyway, and all that stuff. Another one is maybe about feeling like an AI chatbot. Anyway, so those are what you have looking forward to next week. Yeah, thank you so much if you're watching this. I just want to let you know that I really appreciate you sticking around till the end. Yeah, there are, a few people that I see in the comments section repeatedly that, keep answering all the weekly polls that I'm doing. And I just want to say thank you to those people. It really means a lot that, there are folks out there who, appreciate what I have to say, what I'm doing here. So I hope you stick around. Yeah, really hope you stick around. Peace out. See you on the next one. Subscribe.